going to be making red chili from pods today. We're going to use this in one of our dishes, red chili pork tamales, which I'm going to demo for you as well. So the advantage, I think, of using pods over powder is that the pods tend to have, especially if they've been sun-dried, which we do a lot here in New Mexico because we have so much sunlight. We get 300 days of sunshine a year, which makes it advantageous for us to use to dry out things like chili. So in order to clean chili from the red chili pods, here's what you do. And I recommend gloves. If you have sensitive skin or if you wear contact lenses, you definitely want to get some gloves if you're going to be handling chilies. The oils can linger and it can be quite uncomfortable. So you're going to take the chili and you hold it and snap off the stem. And then you're going to shake out as many of the seeds as you can get. You're never going to get them all. There's simply too many. And then sort of cut them up or crunch them up a little bit. So the recipe that you have in your on your recipe packet is slightly different than the one I'm going to show you in terms of technique, not ingredients. So I'm originally from the Southwest. I'm a native of El Paso, Texas, and red chili and green chili is pretty much what we eat every day, all the time. That being said, the recipe that you have in front of you works just fine. This is just a technique variation that I learned from my maternal grandmother who made some of the best red chili ever. So I'm crunching these up a little bit. Take off the stem, shake out as many of the seeds as you can get, and then we're going to crunch that up in a bowl. All right, now come over to your pot. The pot I'm using is a type of clay known as micaceous. Micaceous clay is found in New Mexico. There's actually a really thick vein of it running through the Jicarilla Apache Reservation up in way northwestern New Mexico, southwestern Colorado. So it runs right through the Jicarilla Apache Reservation, and their word for this kind of clay makes beans sweet. Because whatever you cook in this type of clay takes on some of the alkalinity of the clay itself, and it makes it a little bit sweeter than other cooking mediums. I like it for oatmeal, for rice, red chili, tomato sauce. These pots are just really cool to cook in. So I've got my oil in there, and now I'm going to add my red chili pods. Now I'm just going to move these around a little bit and toast them just slightly so they develop a little bit more mature and complex flavor. You don't want to go too long because the red chili can begin to get bitter. So it's starting to change colors now from a really dark red to more of a bricky red. I can smell the chili seeds starting to toast. The seeds are where you're going to get all your heat. So if you want a hotter red chili, leave the seeds in. If you want a milder red chili, take as many out as you can. So now I'm going to add my chopped onions. White and yellow onions we use interchangeably. They're really not that big of a flavor difference. I would not recommend substituting a red onion for either one of the yellow or the white. It just gives things kind of a funky color. All right, there's a little bit of garlic. And I'm going to keep going with this until I can start to smell the chili. And it will become quite aromatic here in just a minute. And then at that point then, I'm going to take my water. You could use chicken stock for this. You could use pork stock for this. To make the red chili pork tamales, we'll take the pork butt and cook it overnight in a crock pot. And then take it out when it's done after about 8 hours, cook it all night long. And then you could use some of the liquid from the pork stock, to make your red chili. It's really preferential. Obviously the pork stock is going to have more flavor than water. Obviously chicken stock is going to have more flavor than water. But all we're after right here is the liquid. Okay. So my red chili is really aromatic now, and it's starting to tint the onions and the garlic. So at this point then, we're going to add the water. And you want to add just enough water so that the red chili floats. The red chilies float. And after these get soft enough to be able to puncture with your thumbnail, we're going to take it, we're going to put it in the blender and blend it so that we make a sauce out of it. Now, I like to strain my red chili to get out any little pieces of peel that don't get ground up. There's a restaurant in town here in Santa Fe that makes really good red chili, and I went in one morning for a breakfast burrito, and I had one of their red chili breakfast burritos, and needed to go into a meeting or something, and I looked in the rearview mirror to make sure I didn't have anything in my teeth, and my whole gum line was covered with red chili peel. So, blending and straining your red chili is a really good idea. Okay, so I'm just going to let that simmer. The only recommendation I have for these clay pots is that you use a wooden spoon. If you use a metal spoon, you can chip it or crack it, and then your pot is no longer good. So the wood ones work, and they're easy on your clay. And then you just need a bamboo handled strainer. Doesn't need to be any more complicated than this, but you do want a blender that's got some pretty good. It's got a pretty good size motor. Red chili can be pretty tough to blend, and it will definitely wear on a blender. So if you're going to be making a lot of red chili, you want to invest in a good blender. All right, so right here, we had this pork in the crock pot all night long. It's very, very tender, still a little bit warm. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to shred this, and then when the red chili is warm and has been blended and strained, I'm going to pour it right on top of the pork here, and then that's going to give us the red chili pork for our tamales. Now, there are about as many different ways to roll a tamale as there are people rolling them. Food historians consider tamales to be the world's first fast food. It can be stuffed with anything, it can be wrapped with anything, and it can be eaten hot or cold. And just like with the Civil War and the Revolutionary War and other wars here in the United States, the women would follow the troops. They would follow their husbands or their brothers or their loved ones, and they would cook for them, and they would treat them if they were injured. Well, women would follow the Aztec and the Maya too, and they would cook for them and treat their wounds, and one of the things that they would cook for them would be tamales. The whole reason behind the wrapper is to keep the ash off of your tamale. So you could take a corn husk or a banana leaf or an hoja santa leaf or a mango leaf. You could take just about anything and wrap these tamales with it, and you could put it into a fire. And then the fire would heat up your tamale, and you could take it, unwrap it, and there you go. So my red chili is just about done. It doesn't take very long. It really doesn't. The softer your chili, the better your yield, and I can let that go just a bit longer. So we're going to start on tamale masa. Tamale masa is a touch. As much as anything is a touch, tamale masa is a touch, and I'm going to show you how to do this so that you make really delicious light tamales. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but it's not. If you do this right, these can be some of the best things you ever put in your mouth. So this is lard. If I were doing vegetarian tamales, I would use shortening or even butter. But for these, since they're going to be pork and red chili, I'm going to just go ahead and use lard. Now, this little pitcher right here has some of the juice that we use to cook the pork in. This had a nice lip of fat on it before I ladled it off. So if you wanted to do this, if you wanted to do the pork a day in advance, you could use that solid fat from the pork in place of lard for your tamales. Now you have to use a saturated fat. You have to use shortening or butter or lard. You can't use a non-saturated fat. They simply don't work. So I'm going to take my lard, which is quite soft, and I'm going to put that in my mixer. KitchenAid with the paddle attachment is really the easiest and most foolproof way of doing this. You could do this with a hand mixer if you don't have one of these, but these are really a nice tool to use. So I'm going to whip this fat until it looks like frosting. Then I'm going to add my salt. And then I'm going to add my masa de harina. So pozole, which we used in our winter squash pozole, is the whole version of masa de harina. So if you take dry pozole and you grind it, you end up with flour for corn tortillas. So if you go to a store and you're looking for masa de harina, on the back of the bag, it's going to say corn and lime. The soaking process has already been done. You're all ready to go. You just need to add a little bit of fat and some liquid to it. So now my fat looks like frosting. I'm going to add the masa slowly so you don't make a huge mess. Okay, and then I'm going to mix that together until it looks like wet sand. So if you've ever made biscuits, this very much looks like biscuit method of mixing. And once it gets to that stage, I'm going to slowly begin to add my pork fat. It's almost better to have your tamale masa too wet than too dry. If it's too wet, it just needs to steam a little bit longer, but if it's too dry, it'll taste horrible. So what I'm looking for is for the ball of masa to start to pick up all of the little pieces of masa on the side of the bowl. It's just like any other kind of bread dough. As soon as you get enough moisture in there, it's going to start to clean out the inside of the bowl. And we're to that stage right now. And I'm going to add just another little bit of that. And that's done. Okay, I'm going to let that sit for a minute. And now I'm going to mix up the red chili. So I'm going to hang on to this pork stock just in case I need a little bit more moisture or a little bit more liquid in my chili. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't. So now I'm going to take this and pour it into my blender. Smell that those sun-dried tomato pods, or sun-dried chili pods. Okay, so again, you want a blender with a pretty good sized motor or a pretty strong motor for this. Red chili can beat up a motor pretty quick. I'm going to add just a little bit of this because I think it needs a little bit more. If you have too much liquid in there, you can reduce it. If you don't have enough, you're going to hurt your blender. So it should be a very smooth consistency. A sauce consistency. But we also want it to be spoon coat, which means it coats the back of the spoon. So with chili, the longer you blend it, the smoother it gets, and the smoother it gets, the more flavor it has, and the more yield you get because you don't leave a lot of chili in your strainer. Okay, so this is what I mean by spoon coat right here. That line should stay. If it doesn't stay, it's too thin, which means you need to reduce it. If it's too goopy, add some more water or some more pork stock. We are Goldilocks just right, and we should probably taste this to make sure it's good. Could definitely use some salt. But you want to be careful here with the salt because the pork has been salted too. So if you add too much, you may end up with something that's oversalted. So use salt as necessary. That's about good. So you definitely want to give it some time. All right, and I can feel some of the red chili in my teeth right now, so this is how we're going to get rid of that. And we're just going to go ahead and pour the red chili right over the pork, since it's going to end up in there anyway. But we're going to pour it through the strainer. That way we can start rolling our tamales. We just want enough red chili on this pork right now just to season it. And if we wanted to, we could also put just a little bit of red chili in our tamale masa. And if you're making multiple types of tamales and you have somebody that maybe doesn't eat pork, you might want to put a little bit of red chili in your masa so that you can easily tell which is which. Okay. So now we can take this and we can pour it through our strainer, go right back in the pot with it. And then we can use that as a dipping sauce. Okay, so my grandmother used to make tamales one way. My coworker Noe Kano, who's the culinary director at the School of Cooking, his grandma used to make them another way. And then there's another guy that works here, and his grandma used to make them another way. So who's correct? They all are. There's about 900,000 million ways to roll a tamale. There are about as many different ways to roll a tamale as there are people's grandmas making them. So don't concern yourself with how you're rolling them, but don't concern yourself with how they look. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do this. It's going to seem very easy. All right. So I'm just pushing the chili through this little strainer. I'm catching any little pieces of peel, any seed, and there's still, despite grinding it in the blender as long as we did, there's still quite a bit of seed and peel getting caught in the strainer. I'm actually kind of surprised that there's so much. But that's why we strain it. And just know that the finer the strainer, the more of that you're going to end up with in your basket, and the less you'll end up with in your pot. So if you don't mind a few pieces of peel, you can get a thicker gauge strainer. If you want a finer, thinner chili, or a more fine chili, use one of these bamboo handled things. Again, it's personal preference. Okay, so these right here are corn husks. And if you don't have a large Hispanic population near where you live, you can order these on SantaFeSchoolOfCooking.com. We carry these in our store. There's two sides to a corn husk. There's the rough side, and there's the not so rough side. Actually, that one has two pretty rough sides. So just pick one. There's no wrong side. So the reason that we use corn here in this part of the world is because corn grows here. But if you go a little further south into way southern Mexico, you don't find any corn, you find plantain. So in the masa here we make of corn, there they would make it out of plantain or yuca or, actually those would probably be the two big things that they would make the masa out of. Okay, this is a very regional food, and it's a very poor food. It's the food of many, 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 many native nations. About 9,000 years food historians estimate tamales go back. Okay, so there is our shredded pork and red chili, and here's our masa. So one of the ways that I make a lot of tamales is I'll use an ice cream scoop in my masa and just scoop onto each of the husks. But we're not making that many today. We're just going to make a few. So I'm going to take about a golf ball sized ball of masa, and I'm going to put that right in the middle of the tamale. Okay? Now, you're going to want to take, so I want you to envision thirds. So you have a third, and a third. Any less filling than this, it's going to be too much masa. Any more filling, and you're not going to be able to encapsulate all of the filling in the masa. And it doesn't matter, I want a little bit of red chili in here because they're red chili. And if I were making a bunch of types of tamales and I had a vegetarian eating with me, I wouldn't want them to accidentally grab the pork. So this just makes it easy to identify. Okay, so now, let me rinse my fingers. All right, so now, here's how you do it. I'm going to take this and put it up kind of like a taco, like that. Take one flap, fold it over, take the skinny end, roll it up, and then roll, roll, roll. So I like to leave the end open. There's a couple different reasons why. As these are steaming, and I've got a steamer staged right over there, as these are steaming, the tamale masa is going to expand, and it's going to climb up the inside of the husk. It'll climb, I don't know, it'll go up maybe about an inch. So that way all I need to do is look inside there and I can see that this is done because it's expanded. So if your husk is too long, just get a pair of scissors and cut it off. And then we can see right inside there. Okay, so for the next one, same way, you're going to fold it up into a little taco. Oh, this one might not work. Okay, fold that part up, fold the skinny part in. Oh yeah, we can get that. And then fold it over like that. Okay, now I use these little things to tie them shut. So you just rip them off. So everything in here is cooked. Nothing is going to try and run away on you. So all you have to do is just tie it so that it just stays shut. All right, so I have a steamer set up right here. And I've got my water boiling right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these tamales in my steamer. It doesn't matter if they're standing up or laying down. What matters is the steam. I'm going to cover these with some foil, and then with a towel and then some foil to catch the steam, and then I'm going to put them into our steamer, and I'm going to let these steam for about 30 to 45 minutes, this size roughly, and then we will open them up and check and see if they're done. How do you check if your tamales are done? That's a good question. So these have been steaming for about 30 minutes, I want to say, 45. So obviously the larger the tamale, the longer you're going to want to steam it. These are about medium size, and I can smell that they're done. So this is a steamer. Boiling water, bamboo, the Asian bamboo steamers are fine, broccoli steamers are fine. Basically just anything with holes that will hold these up out of the water is fine. So if you look inside here, I used a towel, that's to help hold in the steam. So now we're going to take this off, and pull out one of the tamales. So here's how you can tell they're done. If you look inside here, the masa has slid up the cylinder inside the corn husk. So let's untie its little belt. Okay. And then, once you unwrap it, it should be so that when you push on the masa, you do not leave an indentation. If you can do this and you don't leave an indentation, your tamale is done. So now, here's another indicator. When you take this apart, your tamale masa should almost look like cake. If it looks cakey and bready, you're done. And then finally, the final test. Oh yeah, that's good. Thank you.